She smiled as she poured the tea. That's when I knew. Behind my daughter's perfect smile and sweet voice, something was very wrong. My heart knew it before my head did. Mothers can sense these things, even when we don't want to believe them. My fingers trembled slightly as I gripped the delicate teacup, remembering what I'd heard yesterday. It'll all be taken care of soon. Those words kept playing in my mind as I sat in my daughter Heather's spotless kitchen. The words weren't meant for me to hear, but now they hung in the air between us like a poison. I watched Heather stir honey into her own cup from a different teapot than mine. Everything was too perfect today. The special china she only used for guests, fresh flowers on the table, her cheerfulness that seemed rehearsed. She never went to this much trouble for our regular visits. Something was definitely off. Heather kept glancing at my untouched cup, her eyes darting to it every few seconds while she chatted about the weather. Finally, she couldn't stand it anymore. "Mom, aren't you going to try your special herbal blend? I made it just for you." Have you ever felt that something wasn't right with someone you trusted completely? Share your story below. Just yesterday, I was living my comfortable life as a widow in the home Richard and I had shared for 40 years. My suburban house was filled with memories, photos from my teaching days, Richard's favorite chair still in its spot by the window, the garden we'd tended together. At 68, I was content with my quiet life and regular visits with my daughter. I had stopped by Heather's house unexpectedly to drop off a birthday gift for my granddaughter. Since Heather's third divorce last year, I'd been careful to always call before visiting. She'd been so on edge lately, talking about financial troubles while somehow managing to lease a new luxury car. As I approached her kitchen, I heard hushed voices and paused in the hallway. I recognized Heather's voice immediately, but couldn't place who she was talking to. Something made me stay quiet instead of announcing myself. That's when I heard those chilling fragments of conversation. "She has no idea. The house alone is worth over $1 million. The will is already changed. It'll all be taken care of soon." My blood ran cold, but my mind immediately started making excuses. She couldn't possibly be talking about me. There must be some explanation. I drove home in a complete daze, past the park where I used to push Heather on the swings, her little legs kicking with joy. How could that laughing child have turned into someone who would— No, I couldn't let myself finish that thought. There had to be another explanation. That evening, Heather called, her voice overflowing with sweetness. "Mom, we need to catch up. Can you come over for tea tomorrow? I have something important to discuss with you." When I mentioned possibly bringing Rose, my best friend, Heather's voice changed. "Oh no, let's make it just us. Mother-daughter time." The insistence in her voice sent a chill down my spine. I barely slept that night. My mind raced between maternal trust and growing suspicion. Richard always said I was too trusting, especially with family. But this was Heather, my only child, the little girl who once made me macaroni necklaces and cried when I was sick. Could I really suspect her of something so terrible? The next morning I dressed carefully, putting on the pearl earrings Richard had given me for our 30th anniversary. They always made me feel stronger somehow, connected to his practical good sense. "Trust, but verify," he used to say. Today, I needed his wisdom more than ever. As I drove to Heather's house, memories flooded back. Her first day of school, high school graduation, her wedding day. I'd been there for every important moment of her life. I'd helped her through 3 divorces, always taking her side. Had I been blind to something important about my own daughter? I pulled up to Heather's immaculate suburban home with its perfect lawn and new luxury car in the driveway. The car that seemed way beyond what a marketing executive should be able to afford, especially one who kept complaining about financial struggles after her latest divorce. Heather threw open the door before I could knock, her smile too wide, her voice too loud. "Mom, you look amazing. Those pearls are gorgeous on you." She quickly took my purse and coat, whisking them away to another room instead of putting them on the nearby hook. Why was she so eager to separate me from my belongings? The kitchen was pristine, as always, but I noticed little details that seemed off. Prescription bottles hastily swept into a drawer as I entered. Legal papers flipped over on the counter. Heather's eyes darting to the clock every few minutes, as if on a schedule. Heather asked about her twins who were away at college, But when I mentioned their canceled visit last month, she quickly changed the subject. So, Mom, how's the house? Still managing all that maintenance by yourself? Her tone was casual, but something in her eyes wasn't. Have you thought more about retirement planning? Are you keeping track of all your investments? Each question felt like a probe, disguised as daughter's concern but feeling strangely invasive. She'd never been interested in my finances before Richard died and left me comfortable. My internal alarm bells rang louder when Heather casually suggested I should sell the family home. It's really too much for you at your age, Mom. All those stairs, all that upkeep. Wouldn't a nice senior community be easier? She'd never talked to me like I was old and helpless before. Looking around her living room, I noticed something strange. There were framed photos of Heather with her children, but all photos that included me or Richard had disappeared. The family portrait from her graduation that used to sit on the piano was gone. It was as if she was erasing us. Heather began preparing tea with unusual ceremony, explaining it was a special herbal blend, perfect for someone your age, with calming properties. She'd never fussed over tea before. It was always just tea bags and mugs when I visited. I watched her preparing two completely different teapots. This one's caffeinated for me, she explained with a little laugh. But I made this herbal one for you. It's better for your health. She seemed very specific about which pot was which. As we waited for the tea to steep, I noticed more odd behaviors. Heather kept checking her phone, glancing at the time, and asking repeatedly if I felt tired or unwell. You look a little pale, Mom. Have you been sleeping okay? Each concerned question now carried a sinister undertone. Then came the moment. Heather poured the tea with that perfect smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sunlight caught the gleam of her expensive watch, another recent purchase despite those supposed money troubles. She watched me intently as she placed my cup in front of me. Drink it while it's hot, Mom. Her eyes never left my cup as I reached for it. The floral aroma seemed too strong, almost medicinal. Heather leaned forward, watching my every move. Would I drink what my daughter had prepared for me? Have your instincts ever warned you about someone close to you? Tell me in the comments if you listened or ignored them. I stalled by asking for sugar, noticing how Heather's smile tightened for just a second before she masked her irritation. Of course, Mom. Let me get that for you. Her voice was sweet, but her movements were stiff as she fetched the sugar bowl. When she returned, Heather casually mentioned she'd been researching elder care facilities. Just in case, Mom, it's good to be prepared. This from the daughter who knew I was in perfect health. Aside from some recent unexplained dizzy spells that had started after Sunday dinners at her house. My mind flashed to my friend Rose's warnings about Heather's sudden interest in my will and finances. It's not normal, Evelyn, Rose had said last month. Why is she so concerned about your estate planning out of nowhere? I'd dismissed her concerns, defending my daughter. Now I wondered if Rose had seen what I couldn't. I remembered Dr. Chen's concerned questions about my recent symptoms. These dizzy spells only happen after you visit your daughter's house for dinner? He'd asked, his expression troubled. And you said they started right after you updated your will? I hadn't connected those dots until now. Heather's phone rang, and she excused herself to take the call in the living room. Just a quick work thing, Mom. Drink your tea before it gets cold. Suddenly, alone with the untouched cup, I stared at the amber liquid. The sweet floral scent now seemed cloying and suspicious. My mind was at war with itself. Trust my maternal instinct that something was very wrong? Or trust the decades of maternal love that wanted to believe the best of my daughter? The weight of potential betrayal crushed against my chest. Could I really believe Heather wanted to harm me? When Heather returned, her eyes immediately went to my still full cup. Annoyance flashed across her face before she quickly replaced it with concern. Your tea's getting cold, Mom. Don't you like it? I made it specially for you. Suddenly, memories connected like lightning strikes. My heart medication that went missing last month. How I always felt strangely tired after Heather's unexpected visits. The way she'd been asking about my house, my savings, my will, always when I was feeling too foggy to really think clearly. Heather, I said carefully, watching her face, I've been meaning to ask you about that amendment to my will. I don't remember signing anything to change my executor from Rose to your friend David. I watched her carefully, looking for the truth. "Oh, Mom," she laughed, but wouldn't meet my eyes. "We talked about this, remember? David is a professional estate planner. Rose isn't qualified. You were worried about burdening her." Her fingers tapped nervously on the table as she spoke. I'd never agreed to any of this. I remembered finding unfamiliar pills mixed with my regular medication last month. When I showed Heather, she'd quickly taken them from me. "Just a pharmacy error, Mom. I'll take care of it." She'd swept them away before I could look more closely. Another memory surfaced, my granddaughter's confused comment during her last visit. "Mom said she was selling your jewelry collection to help with college costs. But my heirloom jewelry was still locked in my safe at home. Why would Heather tell her daughter that?" There was also that strange reaction when I mentioned planning a Mediterranean cruise with Rose. Heather had immediately discouraged me. "Mom, that's not safe for someone with your health issues." "What health issues?" I was perfectly healthy until these recent mysterious symptoms. And then there was my longtime attorney's contact information mysteriously deleted from my phone after Heather had borrowed it to make a call. "Must have been an accident," she'd said, introducing me to David the next week. This new estate planner, David, Heather's college friend, had seemed more interested in liquidating my assets than preserving them. "At your age, it's better to simplify," he'd advised, recommending I sell my home and investments. How many warning signs had I been ignoring? What would you do if you suspected a family member wanted to harm you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. "I need to use the bathroom," I said suddenly. Heather hesitated, then pointed down the hall. "Use the guest bathroom, Mom. The master bath is being repaired." Another lie. I'd heard the shower running in there earlier. In the bathroom, my hands shook as I quickly but quietly searched through the cabinets. Behind some towels, I found bottles of the same medication Dr. Chen had prescribed for my mysterious symptoms. Why would Heather have my medication? Under the sink, hidden beneath some hand towels, I discovered a notebook. My blood ran cold as I flipped through pages documenting dates of my episodes and notes about my estate's value. One page had calculations comparing the worth of my house versus my investment accounts. Even worse, I found a tablet charging on the counter. When I tapped the screen, it opened to a draft document that made my heart stop. My obituary, dated for the following week, with cause of death TBD. My own daughter had already written my death announcement. With shaking hands, I used my phone to photograph everything: the medication bottles, the notebook pages, the obituary draft. I needed proof of what I was finding. Proof I almost couldn't believe myself. I sent a quick text to Rose. "The garden needs attention immediately." It was a code we had established after watching too many true crime shows together. It meant, emergency. Be ready when I call. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to steady my racing heart. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was a chess game where losing meant more than just my fortune. My daughter was planning my death. Looking in the mirror, I saw not just a potential victim, but a woman who had spent decades teaching high school English, observing human behavior, reading between lines. Those skills had helped me spot troubled teens and lying students. Now they might save my life. I practiced my expression in the mirror, the loving, trusting mother that Heather expected to see. That mask would be my armor now. I couldn't let her suspect that I knew. Not until I was safely away. Back in the kitchen, I noticed the tea had been refreshed, still steaming and waiting for me. Heather's smile seemed impatient now. "There you are." I was getting worried. She gestured to my cup. I made fresh tea. The other got cold. How would I handle the poisoned tea? Shocked by what I've discovered so far? Comment below if you've ever had your trust betrayed. "What beautiful china," I said, admiring the teacup. "I've always loved this set. I might leave it to you in my will." I watched Heather's face, seeing that flash of calculation in her eyes. The mention of my will had certainly caught her attention. "I smell something delicious," I said, sniffing the air. "Are those your cranberry muffins in the oven?" I knew Heather couldn't resist showing off her baking skills. It was one of the few domestic things she took pride in. Heather frowned slightly. "They're not quite ready yet, Mom. Let's enjoy our tea first. I made it special for you." She nudged my cup closer to me, her eyes intent on my hands. Nonsense, I insisted with the authority I once used in my classroom. They smell ready to me. You don't want them to burn, do you? Your muffins won the county fair blue ribbon last year. I knew she couldn't resist the flattery or risk ruining her perfect muffins. Heather hesitated, clearly torn between watching me drink the tea and checking her precious muffins. Fine, she sighed, getting up. Don't let your tea get cold again. She reluctantly headed to the oven across the kitchen. This was my chance. My hand touched the cup, then quickly moved to the drawer beside me. I pulled out my reading glasses case, carefully opened it, and used the small plastic spoon inside to take a sample of the tea, sealing it back in the case. With swift, silent movements perfected through years of confiscating notes in my classroom, I switched the teacups, placing Heather's safe cup where mine had been. The delicate china made barely a sound as I completed the switch. By the time Heather returned with a tray of perfect muffins, I was calmly seated, my hand resting near what now appeared to be my original cup. I smiled pleasantly, heart pounding behind my calm exterior. Heather paused for just a moment, her eyes flicking between the cups on the table. Had she lost track? A flash of uncertainty crossed her face, but then she seemed to decide she couldn't possibly have confused them. I pretended to sip from my cup, actually Heather's safe tea now, making appreciative noises. This is lovely, dear. I watched as Heather visibly relaxed and took a generous drink from what she believed was her safe cup. Actually, the one she'd prepared for me. Now, about my will, Heather began, setting down her cup. I really think we should consider moving some assets around. David says there are tax advantages. She had no idea that with every sip, she was drinking from the cup she had doctored for me. I maintained the conversation while carefully pretending to drink. Tell me more about these tax advantages, I encouraged, noticing Heather becoming increasingly frustrated as the minutes ticked by. Why wasn't I showing any effects from whatever was in that tea? About 20 minutes into our conversation, Heather began showing subtle signs that something was wrong. Her words slurred slightly, and she paused mid-sentence, looking confused. I'm sorry, she said, blinking rapidly. I feel a little tired today. I expressed concern, mimicking the exact phrases she had used when gaslighting me about my own mysterious illnesses. You don't look well, dear. Are you sleeping enough? Perhaps you're coming down with something? Heather's coordination was failing now. As she reached for her cup again, her fingers fumbled, and the delicate china slipped from her grasp, shattering on the floor. The spilled tea spread across the tile like the truth spreading between us. Let me call someone, I said calmly, pulling out my phone. You really don't look well. I have Dr. Chen on speed dial for emergencies just like this. I held up my phone, my finger hovering over the call button. Heather lunged across the table, trying to grab my phone. No, don't call anyone. In her panic, she revealed too much. It's nothing serious, just a mild sedative. I'll be fine. Her words hung in the air between us. I looked at her steadily. But I thought it was just herbal tea, Heather. How would you know there's a sedative in it? The trap had closed, and she was caught in her own lies. Heather's face crumpled as she tried to backtrack, her words slurring more heavily now. That's not... I didn't mean... You misunderstood. She struggled to stand, to appear normal, but whatever she had put in my tea was affecting her now. I've been collecting evidence for months, I said quietly, watching her face. Dr. Chen has been running blood tests after our visits. He found unexplained sedatives in my system every time I'd been to dinner at your house. I calmly listed what I'd found. The obituary draft on your tablet, the medication bottles in your bathroom, the same ones in my blood tests, your notebook calculating the value of my estate, the accidents that kept happening when you visited. Heather's desperate denials were weakening as the sedative took effect. You don't understand, she slurred. I need the money. After the divorce, the kids' college, my debts. But I wasn't listening to excuses anymore. Rose has already contacted my real attorney, I continued calmly. He's waiting for my call right now. The amended will your friend David created is invalid. I never signed it. The signature was forged. I stood up, feeling strangely calm and dignified despite the broken teacup at our feet. I've kept a sample of this tea, I said, showing her my glasses case. Dr. Chen will analyze it. We both know what he'll find. I've already changed my real will, I told her as she struggled to focus on my words. Everything goes into a trust for your children. You'll never touch a penny of it. Rose will manage it until the twins are 30. Heather lunged for her phone on the counter, but in her drugged state, she knocked over the entire tea tray. China shattered across the floor. A perfect metaphor for our relationship, broken beyond repair. A complete record of your actions is in my attorney's hands, I said, picking up my purse. If anything happens to me, anything at all, the police get everything, including what I found in your bathroom today. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments. I walked out while Heather was too disoriented to follow me. My hands were steady on the car keys. The shock was giving way to grief for the daughter I thought I knew. The child I had raised was gone, replaced by someone who had been planning my death for money. I drove straight to Rose's house where she was waiting on her porch. She took one look at my face and wrapped her arms around me. You were right, I whispered. About everything. Inside, her laptop was open with my attorney on a video call, ready to file for an emergency restraining order. Dr. Chen arrived 30 minutes later. I gave him the tea sample and showed him the photos of evidence from Heather's bathroom. He confirmed what we already knew. I was the victim of attempted elder abuse. He documented everything for potential legal action. You did the right thing, Evelyn, Rose said, holding my hand as we sat in her kitchen. You protected yourself. That's not selfish. It's necessary. Her validation eased some of the crushing guilt I felt. What kind of mother suspects her daughter of attempted murder? A mother who wants to survive. That's who. What would I do next? 1 week later, I sat in my home with new locks and a security system, sorting through family photos. Each image of Heather now carried a double meaning. The smiling child I had raised and the stranger she had become. I didn't destroy the photos. Instead, I placed most of them in storage boxes. I kept only one on display. Heather's college graduation, before the divorces, before the financial troubles, before greed had poisoned her heart. I needed to remember that version of my daughter had once existed. My grandchildren called that afternoon. I had told them a sanitized version of events, just that their mother and I were taking some time apart. They were old enough to know something serious had happened, but not the terrible details. We arranged to meet for lunch, just the three of us, without Heather. Maternal love is complicated. I still loved my daughter, even knowing what she had tried to do. But love couldn't override my need to protect myself. I could hold both truths at once, loving the daughter I had raised while accepting the danger she now posed. Heather's desperate voicemails and texts flooded my phone. Threats about contesting the will, guilt trips about abandoning family, sugary apologies claiming misunderstandings. I saved every message as evidence, but I didn't respond to any of them. I joined a support group for seniors facing family betrayal. It was shocking how many others had similar stories. Children or grandchildren trying to access their savings, homes, or investments through manipulation or worse. Their validation helped me feel less alone. Unexpected allies emerged from everywhere. My neighbors now checked on me daily. Former students sent cards and called. And Rose, steady, practical Rose, proved that chosen family could be stronger than blood. She slept on my couch for the first 3 nights after the tea incident, as we now called it. I started volunteering teaching English to immigrants at the community center. These students valued knowledge and showed genuine appreciation for my help. Their respect and eagerness to learn helped heal something broken inside me. I sold some of Richard's collectible watches, items Heather had been eyeing for years, and used the money to book that Mediterranean cruise Rose and I had talked about. Life was too short to keep waiting for someday, especially when someday had nearly been stolen from me. I redecorated my living room, removing items Heather had increasingly referred to as hers someday. Each change made the house feel more mine again, and less like a future inheritance someone was impatiently waiting to claim. They say when you clear your space, you clear your mind. I think they're right. Inspired by how I've reclaimed my home? Share what changes you've made to take back your space. Eventually, I agreed to meet Heather at a public cafe. Rose and my attorney sat at a nearby table, close enough to intervene if needed. Heather looked thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. She'd brought photos of the twins, using them as emotional leverage. "I will always be your mother," I told her calmly. "But I am also my own person with the right to safety and respect. Those aren't negotiable anymore." My voice didn't shake. The fear was gone, replaced by clarity. Heather tried every manipulation technique: tears, accusations, promises of change, even threats. Each attempt bounced off my new awareness like rain off a window. When she demanded one more chance, I simply stood up while she was mid-sentence and walked away. For the first time in decades, I controlled when our conversation ended. My meeting with my grandchildren went better than expected. I was honest in an age-appropriate way, explaining that their mother and I had serious disagreements that couldn't be quickly fixed. I gave them the freedom to form their own opinions and promised my door would always be open to them. There's a strange relief in having secrets exposed. The weight of doubting my own perceptions had been heavier than facing the terrible truth. Now I could trust my instincts again, without that voice whispering that I was just a forgetful old woman overreacting to nothing. The greatest betrayal wasn't the poisoned tea. It was realizing that decades of maternal love and sacrifice had meant so little that they could be exchanged for material gain. No house or bank account could possibly equal the value of trust between mother and daughter. That was the real theft. 6 months later, I hosted a dinner party with my new chosen family: Rose, Dr. Chen, 2 neighbors who had become dear friends, and former colleagues who valued me for myself, not for what I owned. The laughter in my dining room felt like healing. I served tea after dinner, a deliberately ironic choice that made Rose raise her eyebrows, but I needed to reclaim this ritual that had been weaponized against me. As I poured from my grandmother's teapot, I felt something broken beginning to mend. That night, after everyone left, I sat on my porch thinking about how protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect. Allowing others to harm you doesn't help them. It just teaches them that harmful behavior works. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is set a boundary. I'd defeated Heather's plot not through drama or revenge, but through wisdom and quiet strength, qualities she had dismissed as weakness. She'd seen my kindness as an easy target rather than the powerful force it truly was. In the end, my old-fashioned values had saved my life. The next morning, my granddaughter called to ask if she could visit for the weekend. We made plans without any mention of Heather as intermediary. Direct relationships based on genuine connection were replacing the obligatory family structures that had nearly destroyed me. I found unexpected peace in controlling my own narrative. For years, I'd been hostage to maintaining family appearances, smoothing over tensions, making excuses for Heather's behavior. Now I could simply tell the truth without fear or shame. The freedom was intoxicating. That night, I moved Richard's photo back to my bedside table. "You were right about so many things," I told his smiling face. "I'm finally learning to put myself first, just like you always said I should." I could almost hear his warm chuckle of approval. A formal letter arrived from Heather a week later, written from a rehabilitation facility. She claimed transformation and healing, asking for a second chance at our relationship. I acknowledged her effort but responded with healthy skepticism. Recovery happens through actions, not words. Rose and I started a new Sunday tradition: afternoon tea at her house or mine, reclaiming the ritual with someone worthy of trust. The contrast between these peaceful gatherings and that terrible day at Heather's house showed me what genuine care looks like. I finalized paperwork for a foundation scholarship in Richard's name for students interested in teaching. My legacy would benefit deserving young people rather than funding my daughter's lifestyle. Richard would have approved of education being our final shared project. Sometimes grief for the daughter I thought I had would hit me unexpectedly. Seeing a mother and daughter shopping together, or finding an old Mother's Day card. I allowed myself to feel that sadness alongside pride in my own strength. Both emotions could exist together. Looking back, I realized my greatest strength wasn't in the dramatic moment of switching those teacups. It was in the quiet decision that preceded it, the choice to value myself enough to act. That private moment of resolve had changed everything. There's simple pleasure in planning a future without fear. making choices based on joy rather than appeasement. I'd spent decades considering everyone else's needs first. Now I asked myself what I wanted before making decisions. It felt revolutionary. I opened my home for a women's support group focused on family estrangement and elder abuse. Sharing my experience helped others recognize warning signs I had missed. Each story shared became a lantern lighting someone else's dark path. My granddaughter asked if she could stay with me for the summer instead of at Heather's condo. "It's just more peaceful at your house, Grandma," she said. That simple preference meant more than any inheritance ever could. She was choosing my influence over her mother's. I noticed physical changes in myself, standing taller, shoulders back, voice stronger. My neighbor even commented that I looked younger. "You're glowing, Evelyn," she said. Freedom from manipulation had physical effects I hadn't anticipated. With Rose's help, I finalized a proper estate plan with provisions ensuring my assets would benefit those who valued human connection over material gain. The peace this gave me was worth more than the money itself. A former student emailed me about her own mother trying to manipulate her out of an inheritance. "Your story saved me from making terrible mistakes," she wrote. The ripple effect of sharing painful truths continued to surprise me. Rose and I booked our long-postponed European trip, 2 weeks exploring countries we'd taught about but never seen. Symbolic of dreams deferred now finally pursued, the trip represented everything my new life stood for. I created a memory box of genuine family moments to preserve. Camping trips when Heather was young, her science fair victories, holidays before the poison of greed. These memories weren't false, just incomplete. I could honor what had been real while accepting what was now true. One morning, I realized I hadn't thought about Heather's betrayal in days. That's when I understood that healing isn't about forgetting, but about robbing the memory of its power. The pain was becoming a story rather than an open wound. I taught my first ESL class at the community center, helping new Americans learn the language that would open doors for them. The satisfaction of nurturing those who genuinely wanted to grow filled a space in my heart that family obligation had once occupied. That evening, I cleaned my wedding rings, not removing them, but polishing them to brightness. They represented a genuine love that had existed, regardless of what came after. I could honor my past without being trapped by it. A year after what I now called the Teacup Day, I hosted a tea ceremony for my support group. We used the ritual as a symbol of transformation. What had been weaponized against us now celebrated our survival. We raised our cups in a toast to second chances and hard-won wisdom. The hardest truth to accept was that I still loved my daughter, but now understood that love must include boundaries to be healthy. Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional access to your life, your home, or your bank account. This lesson had nearly cost me everything. When Heather and I finally had another carefully controlled meeting, I could see both improvement and lingering manipulation in her behavior. She showed some genuine reflection, but still tested boundaries in subtle ways my newly trained eye easily caught. Recovery is neither quick nor complete. I began working with an elder law attorney to develop resources for seniors facing family estrangement or exploitation. My personal trauma was becoming community support, giving purpose to pain that might otherwise have remained meaningless. My evening routine became a series of small pleasures I'd once postponed for others' convenience. Reading in the bath, listening to classical music, calling old friends. These simple joys formed the foundation of my rebuilt life. The community center presented me with an award for my volunteer work with immigrant families. Standing on that stage, I felt a quiet confidence that would have been impossible before. Sometimes strength comes from surviving what you thought would break you. Occasionally, I felt compassion for Heather, recognizing the emptiness of a life measured only in possessions. What a hollow existence, counting the days until an inheritance rather than building something meaningful of your own. I could maintain boundaries while still hoping she found a better path. I started writing a memoir, with the tea incident as its conclusion. This record of truth would ensure my story couldn't be rewritten after I was gone. Our family history would include both the love and the betrayal, the full, complicated truth of who we had been to each other. The scholarship fund I created for students interested in elder care advocacy turned my inheritance into a force for positive change. Each year, 2 students would receive support for education that would help protect others from what I had experienced. My grandson called to ask my advice about an ethical dilemma he faced at college. "I need someone with clear judgment," he explained, "someone who stands by their principles." His recognition of these qualities in me healed something I hadn't realized was still broken. At the annual extended family reunion, I declined to participate in the usual false narratives about how perfect our family relationships were. When asked about Heather, I simply said, "We're working through some difficult issues," without elaboration. The truth didn't need defending. Rose and I celebrated our birthdays together with a weekend trip to the coast. Our chosen sister bond had grown stronger through crisis, creating new traditions that honored what family should actually provide: safety, respect, and genuine care. The day I realized I no longer flinched when someone prepared tea for me marked a final victory over fear. Rose noticed and quietly squeezed my hand as our friend poured from a teapot at lunch. "Look at you," she whispered proudly. "Some healings happen without words." I attended my granddaughter's college graduation, our relationship stronger for being based on truth rather than obligation. "You're the strongest person I know, Grandma," she told me as we celebrated afterward. "You taught me to trust myself." No inheritance could equal that gift. Going through old teaching evaluations one rainy afternoon, I found a pattern of students thanking me for seeing them clearly when others didn't. The same wisdom that had made me an effective teacher had eventually saved my life when I finally applied it to my own situation. 2 years after the incident, I decided to sell my too-large house, not because Heather had pressured me, but because I chose a space that better suited my new life. The decision was mine alone, made from a position of strength rather than fear. Moving day arrived with mixed emotions. I carefully selected what to bring to my new condo, each choice an affirmation of what truly mattered to me. Some things were easy to leave behind. Furniture Heather had always coveted, rooms I rarely used, the garden that required constant maintenance. My housewarming party filled my new condo with laughter and genuine affection. Rose brought champagne, Dr. Chen brought flowers, and neighbors brought home-cooked dishes. These people, my chosen family, celebrated this next chapter with me in a way blood relations sometimes can't. I created a special area for my grandchildren, a cozy nook with books, games, and a pull-out sofa for overnight stays. Maintaining these loving connections mattered more than keeping toxic ones. The twins visited the following weekend, filling the space with exactly the energy I'd hoped for. That evening, after everyone had gone, I prepared tea for myself in my sunny new kitchen. The ritual had been fully reclaimed as self-nurturing rather than self-harming. The porcelain teapot was new, purchased on my trip to Italy with Rose, and carried no bitter memories. She smiled as she poured the tea, but I smiled when I reclaimed my life, cup by cup, day by day, choice by choice. The betrayal nearly broke me, but the rebuilding made me stronger than I'd ever been. Sometimes family isn't who you're related to, but who truly cares for you. If this resonated with you, please share this video